Look, I know what you're thinking, I say to the security camera, because at this point that's who I'm reporting to. When the first intergalactic space station opened above Earth, nobody expected the biggest business opportunity to be babysitting, but here we are. I paused to wipe some sort of purple goo off my uniform. It's probably just drool from the Jovian triplets, but with alien kids you never really know. Could be blood, could be psychic residue, could be tomorrow's lunch, quantum leaking backwards through time. For the record, I continue, tiny Terran Tyke's daycare was doing just fine before the incident. Sure, we were the only human-run childcare facility in this sector of the galaxy, but we had a system, we had standards, we had fewer than 30 kids from 15 different species, which was totally manageable. The security officer watching this footage is probably wondering why I'm giving a statement to a camera at 3 a.m. station time. That's fair. I'm wondering the same thing. But when you're responsible for the biggest diplomatic breakthrough in human history, and also maybe starting a small war, you learn to document everything. It all started 3 cycles ago when Ambassador K-Thrix burst through our front door. Now, when I say burst, I mean it literally. 8 feet of iridescent Mantis alien came crashing through our reinforced plasteel entrance, all 4 arms waving in distress. The fact that she ignored the perfectly good auto sliding door next to it told me this was going to be one of those days. "You must help," K-Thrix's translator squealed. "The Grand Clutch is in danger." My assistant manager, Dave, who had been cleaning up after the Martian slug tots morning snack, looked at me with what I'd come to recognize as his "please don't take any more emergency cases" expression. I ignored him, because that's what good managers do. "Ambassador," I said, trying to sound professional while picking up pieces of our former door. "Welcome to tiny Terran Tykes. How can we help?" K-Thrix's compound eyes swiveled independently, one fixed on me, the other scanning our facility. "The council meeting, it is not safe. Threats have been made. My clutch requires protection for approximately 7 Earth hours." I knew about the Galactic Council meeting. Everyone on Station Unity knew about it. First time Earth was hosting, big diplomatic deal, lots of security. What I didn't know was why one of the highest-ranking ambassadors in the sector was bringing her kids to my daycare instead of using the official council creche. I started. "There's a secure facility right in the council chamber. Run by Predaxian guards," she chittered. "Predators. Would you leave your young with creatures evolved to hunt your species?" I opened my mouth to point out that humans were technically predators too, then closed it. This was a weird quirk we'd discovered about 2 years after first contact. Most spacefaring species were either prey animals or omnivorous grazers, and they were absolutely terrified of leaving their children with predatory species. Except humans. Nobody really knew why, but for some reason even the most skittish herbivore species trusted us with their kids. "How many in your clutch?" I asked instead. 47. Dave dropped his mop. "Here's something they don't tell you in space station orientation: alien reproduction strategies are wild. Some species have 1 kid every century, others have thousands every week. The Mantis folk, apparently, split the difference." 40. 7, I repeated slowly. "Ambassador, our maximum capacity is 35, and we currently have 28 enrolled." A distant boom shook the station. Emergency lights flashed. A calm AI voice announced minor structural damage in council sector. "All non-essential personnel please remain in place." K-Thrix's antennae went flat against her head. "Please," she said. "I will pay triple your normal rate." I looked at Dave. Dave looked at me. Dave looked at our quarterly profit margins floating in the corner of his augmented reality display. "Let me show you our infant care room," I said. And that's how it started. Not with the missing kid, or the sabotage, or the discovery that would change human-alien relations forever. Just with me ignoring every safety regulation in the book, because an alien ambassador pulled the one move no daycare operator can resist offering to pay triple. The security camera blinks at me, its AI probably wondering why I'm pausing for dramatic effect. "Right," I say. "You probably want to know about the chaos that followed. Well, remember how I mentioned we had a system?" I pull up my sleeve to show a nasty-looking bite mark that's definitely going to leave a scar. This is the story of how that system went straight to hell. The thing about running an interstellar daycare is that you need to be prepared for anything. Human kids are challenging enough, they're basically tiny drunk people with no impulse control. Alien kids? Imagine that same lack of impulse control, but some of them can teleport, or secrete acid, or accidentally bend space-time when they sneeze. That's why our facility had specialized containment rooms. Anti-grav chambers for the low-gravity species, methane environments for the gas breathers, a quantum stabilization field for the ones who hadn't quite figured out how to exist in just 3 dimensions at once. K-Thrix's clutch, thankfully, just needed a humid environment and plenty of climbing space. We converted our main playroom, moving the other kids to secondary areas. Dave started building makeshift hammocks while I handled intake processing. Name, I asked the first little Mantis child. Click, 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 scree, Poppet replied. How about we call you Jimmy for the paperwork? The translator chirped an approximation of agreement. 1 down, 46 to go. By the time we'd processed the entire clutch, naming them all with increasingly desperate human names like Bobby, Sally, Frank, Susan, and eventually just numbers 30 through 47, 3 more explosions had rocked the station. The AI kept insisting everything was fine, which anyone who's ever lived on a space station knows means exactly the opposite. Dave, I called out, watching him arrange the last of the Mantis kids in their hammocks, check the news feeds. He blinked, eyes going unfocused as he accessed his AR display. Boss, we might have a problem. Define problem. Station's on lockdown. Some kind of security breach in the council chambers, they're saying. The lights went out. Now, darkness isn't usually a big deal in space. Everyone's got backup systems for their backup systems. But when you're responsible for 75 kids from 20 different species, and some of those species are bioluminescent, and others are photosynthetic, and still others experience time backwards in the dark, well, it gets complicated. The emergency lights kicked in just in time for me to see one of our regular charges. A lovely Arcturian light squid named Glowing Beauty. Their names are actually colors of light our eyes can't see, but we do our best, starting to panic strobe. No, no, no. I lunged forward. Deep breaths, Beauty. Remember what we practiced. Too late. The strobing triggered a chain reaction. The photosynthetic Venusian twins started to wilt. The Jovian triplets, who experienced light as sound, began crying in 3-part harmony. And all 47 Mantis kids, apparently believing this was some sort of disco party, started doing their species' traditional war dance. Dave, bless him, was already moving. He caught 2 of the Jovian triplets before they could reach their favorite crying spot, the ceiling, redirected a quantum-phasing Plutonian toddler back into normal space, and somehow managed to start our backup generator with his 3rd hand. Wait, Dave doesn't have a 3rd hand. Boss, he called out, now definitely only having 2 arms again. You saw that too, right? The temporal echo? Yeah, Beauty's strobe must have crossed streams with the quantum kids' phasing. We're getting timeline bleed. Great, Dave sighed. Because this day wasn't complicated enough. That's when our door chime rang. The one connected to the door that Ambassador K-Thrix hadn't destroyed. Standing there was Station Security Chief Rogers, looking like someone who'd rather be literally anywhere else in the galaxy. Behind him was a delegation of what appeared to be very angry alien diplomats. Mr. Rodriguez, Rogers said, using the tone of voice reserved for people about to have a very bad day, we need to talk about your visitor permits. I glanced back at our room full of chaos, the strobing squid, the quantum kids, the Mantis war dance party, and did what any responsible business owner would do. I blamed Dave. Officer, I started, but was interrupted by another explosion. This one felt closer, much closer. The lights flickered again, and in that moment of darkness, I heard something that every childcare worker dreads, the distinctive sound of a teleporting toddler. When the lights came back, we were missing one very important Mantis child. Specifically, the one I'd named Jimmy, who also happened to be Ambassador K-Thrix's heir. The security chief looked at the empty hammock, then at me. So he said, "Want to explain why you're running an unlicensed daycare during a terrorist attack?" Behind me, Dave had the audacity to laugh. "Bossy," said, "remember how you said this morning that at least things couldn't get worse?" The station's AI chose that moment to finally be honest with us. Attention all personnel. Station Unity is now experiencing a full systems failure. Please proceed to your designated evacuation points. This is not a drill. Also, engineering would like to apologize for the impending oxygen recycling shutdown. Have a nice day. Here's a fun fact about space station evacuation protocols: they don't account for daycare centers. Specifically, they don't account for daycare centers housing 74 kids from 20 species, one of whom is just teleported somewhere aboard a failing station roughly the size of Manhattan. Right, I said, my mind racing faster than a caffeinated quantum particle. Dave, start evacuation prep. Chief Rogers, I need station-wide access to the security feeds. Rogers, to his credit, only hesitated for about 2 seconds before making the worst decision of his career. Granted, but I'm staying right here. Fine. And you, I pointed at the delegation of angry diplomats. Either help us with the kids or get out. We're about to have 74. 73, Dave helpfully corrected. 70-3 panicking children to evacuate, and I don't have time for bureaucracy. The diplomats looked at each other, probably wondering how they'd ended up here instead of at their nice, safe council meeting. Then again, given the explosions, maybe not so safe. A Venusian diplomat stepped forward, her leafy skin glowing with bioluminescent concern. I will assist. My species is adept at calming young ones. Great. You're on Jovian triplet duty. They respond well to photosynthetic frequencies. One by one, the other diplomats volunteered. Turns out facing imminent station failure is great for international cooperation. Who knew? I pulled up the security feeds on my Heir display while Dave organized our impromptu evacuation team. The station's cameras covered about 80% of public spaces, which meant Jimmy could be in any of about 10,000 locations. But we had one advantage: Mantis kids that young can only teleport about 50 meters at a time, and they need light to do it. Computer, I called out, track power fluctuations consistent with Mantis child teleportation, starting from this room last 5 minutes. Working, the AI replied. Also, oxygen recycling will fail in approximately 45 minutes. Would you like to hear today's lunch menu? Sometimes I think station AIs develop a weird sense of humor when they're about to die. The security feed lit up with a trail of power spikes leading away from our daycare. They headed straight toward. Oh no. The council chambers, Rogers said, looking over my shoulder. Your missing kid is heading right for the source of our security breach. Of course he is. Because this day wasn't interesting enough, I turned to Dave, who was somehow managing to herd our remaining charges into emergency transport pods. How long until everyone's ready to move? 10 minutes, minimum. The quantum kids are phase-locked with the pod's containment fields. Beauties finally stop strobing, and the Mantis clutch is actually being surprisingly cooperative. I looked at the remaining 46 Mantis children. They had formed a perfect line, their compound eyes all focused on me with an intensity that was either heartwarming or terrifying. There's a fine line between the two with Mantis folk. They're waiting for us to rescue their clutch mate, the Venusian diplomat said softly. In their culture, the group protects its own. Always. And that's when it hit me. The reason why prey species trust humans with their young. It wasn't just about our caregiving abilities or our advanced facilities. It was about something much more fundamental. Chief, I said, I need you to evacuate everyone else. Dave's in charge of the transport pods. I'm going after Jimmy. Absolutely not, Rogers started, but I cut him off. Look at those kids, I pointed at the Mantis clutch. They trust us. Not because we're safe, but because we're predators who choose to protect. Every human who's ever worked with alien children knows this feeling, this absolutely irrational, completely unstoppable need to keep them safe. It's not just a job. It's pack bonding, the Venusian diplomat whispered. Your species bonds with anything that needs protection, even species that would naturally fear you. Exactly. And right now, one of my pack is out there alone. Another explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered ominously. 38 minutes until oxygen recycling failure, the AI announced cheerfully. Would anyone like to hear a joke? Rogers looked at his security feeds, then at me, then at the line of Mantis children all watching us with unwavering focus. Fine, he said. But we do this by the book. More or less. Mostly less, given the circumstances. I turned to Dave. Get them to safety. And if I'm not back in 30 minutes, name the next human alien daycare after you, he suggested. I was going to say come rescue me, but sure, that works too. As I headed out with Rogers, I heard Dave addressing our remaining charges. All right, kids, who wants to play emergency evacuation spaceship? It's just like regular spaceship, but with more screaming into the void. I really needed to give that man a raise. Assuming we all survive the next 30 minutes. Running through a failing space station while tracking a teleporting Mantis child is exactly as fun as it sounds. Which is to say, not at all. 29 minutes to oxygen recycling failure, the AI announced. Did you know that humans can survive up to 3 minutes without oxygen? This has been your helpful survival tip of the day. Rogers and I followed the trail of power fluctuations through increasingly damaged sections of the station. The closer we got to the council chambers, the worse things looked. Scorch marks on walls, damaged panels, the distinct smell of fried circuitry and something else. Is that coffee? I asked, sniffing the air. Rogers stopped so suddenly I almost ran into him. Triple shot espresso, he said, with a hint of Martian vanilla. Now, there are 2 things you need to know about coffee in space. First, real coffee is worth its weight in antimatter out here. Second, only one establishment on Station Unity served Martian vanilla coffee. The Stellar Brew, we said simultaneously. The Stellar Brew was our main competitor in the childcare business, though they pretended to be just a coffee shop. Their owner, a human named Marcus Phillips, had been trying to get our license revoked for months, claiming we were endangering the station's children by accepting too many species. You think Marcus is behind the attacks? I asked. Let's find out. Rogers pulled out his sidearm. Jimmy's power signature leads right to their service corridor. We found the hidden door easily enough. It was the one with unconscious Predaxian guards slumped in front of it. The air smelled heavily of some kind of gas. Sleeping agent, Rogers said, checking his scanner. Non-lethal, but powerful enough to knock out even predator species. Then why are we still conscious? Because a familiar voice said behind us, it's calibrated specifically for non-human biology. We turned to find Marcus Phillips himself, holding what looked like a heavily modified coffee maker. Really, I couldn't help saying, your weapon of choice is a coffee maker. This station runs on coffee. Marcus smiled. Nobody questions a barista carrying brewing equipment, even when that equipment is actually delivering a precise mix of neurological suppressants. But why? Rogers demanded. Why attack the council meeting? Because humans shouldn't be taking care of alien children, Marcus shouted, his calm facade cracking. We're predators. We're dangerous. Once the council sees how unsafe their children are with humans, they'll have to shut down every human-run daycare in the galaxy. My demonstration will prove. He was interrupted by a very distinctive sound, the pop of a Mantis child teleporting. Jimmy appeared directly above Marcus, dropping onto his shoulders with all the grace of a falling brick. The coffee maker turned weapon went flying, and I dove to catch it before it could disperse its contents throughout the corridor. No, Marcus tried to grab Jimmy, but apparently forgot that Mantis children have significantly better grip strength than humans. The boy clung to his head like the world's most determined hat. 15 minutes to oxygen recycling failure, the AI chimed in. Also, Security Chief Rogers, you have an urgent message from evacuation control. Would you like me to play it now, or should I wait until after everyone suffocates? Rogers ignored the AI, keeping his weapon trained on Marcus. The kid found him, he said, sounding impressed. How did he know? I looked at Jimmy, still happily perched on our would-be terrorist's head. Because Marcus smells like the stuff that hurt the guards. Don't you, Jimmy? The Mantis child chittered an affirmative. Mantis folk have an incredible sense of smell, something Marcus apparently hadn't accounted for in his plan. The council meeting, Rogers said. Was that you too? Marcus laughed bitterly. Just a diversion. The real target was always the daycares. All of them. Once the sleeping agent disperses through the station's air recycling. My blood ran cold. The evacuation pods. They were connected to the station's air supply. I hit my comm link. Dave. Seal the pods. The air system's compromised. Already done, Boss Dave's calm voice replied. Beauty smelled something wrong with the air about 10 minutes ago. We're running on emergency oxygen tanks. All kids present and accounted for. Well, except for our little hero up there. I could have kissed that bioluminescent squid. And Dave. Well, maybe not Dave. 10 minutes to oxygen recycling failure, the AI announced. Chief Rogers, that message is quite urgent. Also, I've been learning about human music. Would you like to hear final countdown while we wait? Rogers finally acknowledged his message terminal. His eyes widened. The evacuation pods. They're not deploying. Something's wrong with the launch systems. Marcus smiled again. Can't have anyone leaving before my demonstration is complete. Don't worry, I have an override code. I'd be happy to share it, once every human-run daycare in the sector agrees to shut down. Jimmy chose that moment to do something either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. He teleported again, taking Marcus with him. They rematerialized near the ceiling, then fell. Marcus hit the ground hard. Jimmy teleported again before impact, reappearing safely in my arms. That I told the Mantis child was simultaneously the smartest and dumbest thing I've ever seen. You're definitely getting extra snack privileges. 5 minutes to oxygen recycling failure. Shall I play final countdown now? The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Rogers secured Marcus while I contacted Dave. Between Jimmy's surprisingly good memory for overhead codes and our evacuation team's combined expertise, we managed to override the pod launch controls with about 2 minutes to spare. All evacuation pods successfully launched, the AI announced. Oxygen recycling failure in 2 minutes. I have decided not to play final countdown as it seems a bit on the nose. Instead, please enjoy this selection of elevator music. As Muzak versions of classic space shanties filled the failing station, Rogers and I secured Marcus in a portable containment field and headed for the last remaining escape pod. Jimmy, still in my arms, seemed entirely too pleased with himself. You know, I told the Mantis child most kids would have been scared. But you tracked down the bad guy, saved your clutch mates, and probably prevented an interstellar diplomatic incident. Not bad for someone who can't even reach the top shelf of the snack cabinet. Jimmy chittered something that the translator rendered as humans protect. I protect too. And there it was. The missing piece of the puzzle. The reason why even the most cautious species trust humans with their young. We weren't just predators who chose to protect, we taught others to protect as well. Our pack bonding instinct wasn't just about adding members to our pack. It was about teaching the whole pack to look after each other. 60 seconds to oxygen recycling failure. Please proceed to the nearest exit. If you cannot find the nearest exit, feel free to hold your breath and hope for the best. We made it to the escape pod with 45 seconds to spare. As we launched away from Station Unity, I could see the other pods already being picked up by emergency response ships. Dave, I called over the comm, status report. All kids safe and accounted for, he replied. The diplomats are already calling it the Unity incident apparently. We've just proven why humans should be in charge of xenospecies childcare across the galaxy. Also, Ambassador K. Thrix would like to know if we're accepting permanent enrollment applications. I looked at Jimmy, who was now teaching Rogers some kind of Mantis victory dance. Tell her we'll need to expand our facilities first, and maybe invest in better door security. The aftermath was both better and worse than expected. Marcus went to prison, obviously. Station Unity required several months of repairs. The Stellar Brew was converted into an overflow facility for tiny Terran tykes, which had suddenly become the most popular childcare center in 3 sectors. The Galactic Council, in a rare moment of unanimous agreement, established new guidelines for xenospecies childcare. Humans were officially recognized as having a unique qualification for the field, thanks to what they termed our adaptive pack bonding capabilities and predatory protective instincts. Dave got his raise, along with a promotion to Deputy Director of Interspecies Relations. Beauty the Light Squid was hired as our official security consultant. And Jimmy? Well, he started a trend. Within a year, we had to add a whole new wing just for Mantis folk who wanted their children to learn human-style protection protocols. And that's my statement I tell the security camera, finishing up what has to be the longest incident report in station history. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go prepare for tomorrow's new enrollments. We're getting our first clutch of Betelgeusian star dragons, and I hear they're teething. I pause at the door, then turn back to the camera with a grin. Oh, and if anyone's wondering, we did name the new facility after Dave. He wouldn't let us name it after me since I'm still alive. Said it would be tempting fate. The camera blinks once, logging the end of my statement. As I head back to my office, I can hear the distant sound of children from a dozen worlds playing together, learning to protect each other just like we protected them. Turns out humans aren't just good at taking care of alien kids. We're good at teaching the whole galaxy how to be a better pack. Even if it means occasionally dealing with teleporting toddlers and coffee-wielding terrorists.